In chapter 2, he's going to talk about the 3 levels of culture. I won't go over all of these, but the artifacts, that's what we're accustomed to. The espoused beliefs and values, we kind of get that. We know that's important. But it's not just the ones that are written in the philosophy. They're the ones that people talk about and use to explain what's going on. But then the underlying assumptions, that's where he's aiming. And if you read this chapter, as you read it, just look at how this applies to the place where you are. The heart of the book is really on page 27. Basic underlying assumptions. How do we get a hold of those? And he talks about arduous and double loop learning, and arduous and shown and theories in use, and these mental maps, and all the different ways that people talk about getting at those basic assumptions. I like the little story he tells, the illustration at the bottom of page 29, top of page 30. Then he mentions McGregor. Oh, that's so good. Basic assumptions about employees. I'm sure you've already encountered McGregor's work so far in this study, this course that you're taking. Chapter 3. Let me move through that one rather quickly. He's giving you examples out of his own work, places where he has been called in, and the successes he's had. You will find those interesting if you like to read case studies, and you learn best that way. If not, go to page 53 and you will see the assumptions and the conclusions that he draws. Not the assumptions, but the conclusions. Chapter number 4, he then deals with the micro, sub, and macro cultures. And again, you can read the illustrations, or if you like, look at the basic charts that he has and study those particularly. I'll give you the page numbers. Page 58, page 61, page 63, and then on page 67, where he talks about the microcultures, and then the summary and conclusions. That's where you really want to see it. This book is a powerful piece, and I want to encourage you. Take your time, especially with this first section. When you've finished it, then turn and start to look at diagnosing and changing organizational culture. And I want to share that one with you now. I really like the work of Cameron and Quinn on the preface, which is Roman numeral 7. The book was written to help you diagnose and initiate change in organizational culture. So it's a very practical approach, although it's quite academic, and in places it's very technical. So don't get lost in the technicalities of it. They like that stuff. Let me see where I want to share with you a couple of thoughts here. Tells you about the authors. Notice on page number 1, an introduction to changing organizational culture starts the same place as Sheen's book, only he is dealing with Peter Drucker. We are in one of those great historical periods that occur every 200 or 300 years, when people don't understand the world anymore, and the past is not sufficient to explain the future. That's why culture becomes so important, because culture guards the past. It brings what worked in the past into the present. But if what worked in the past doesn't work in the present, that's dysfunctional. That is the problem. When we say dysfunctional in a ministry, we're talking about we don't grow, we have unhealthy relationships, we're not living out the Christ-like mission. When you say dysfunctional in a business, you are not competitive in the market. You are not profitable. You are not productive. All right. I love his quote on the top of page 2, the first full paragraph there. Tom Peters, if you are not confused, you're not paying attention. Isn't that marvelous? Drop that in something somewhere. That'll work. Oh, good piece. Bottom of page 2. Porter talks about the conditions that really are necessary for success for a business. This was what everybody understood 30 years ago. I mean, this is how it worked. And then, bottom of page 3, Cameron and Kuhn go on to say that none of those conditions are with us anymore. We have to find a new way to go about creating value in the world of business. Top of page 6. In addition to organization level effects, the impact of organizational culture on individuals is also well documented. If you will look back at Appendix A, they review some of the academic literature. If you enjoy that, I do, so I read that quite thoroughly. And then on page 6, middle of the page, the paragraph that begins, our main focus in this book, that's of course a key. Notice that's the essence of what they're talking about. They then describe the need for cultural change, and they give you the major changes that have been going on in the last couple of decades. Total quality management, downsizing, re-engineering, and why those things don't work. And they simply are not working, and they're not working not because they're bad strategies, but because they go so contrary to culture that you cannot make them work. You can't fit a person into that size suit if their body is of a different size, and that's the issue that we're dealing with here. See if there's something else here I wanted to share with you. Good business illustration, actually, on page 12 of General Motors. I kind of leaned toward that one. I lived in Detroit for a number of years and saw a little of that in action. And you can read all that material. Then on page number 16, the meaning of organizational culture. Go through that a little more in depth. He talks about, at least cites, Peters and Waterman, 1982. That's the book In Search of Excellence. That was one of the classic first books on organizational culture, certainly in the popular literature. And I am just looking. And then he deals with Sheen, which is our other book on page 18. You notice he cites that. This is a great piece. It's designed to give you an assessment tool that we're going to look at. Now, just so that you are aware, this was the original book, Beyond Rational Management. Superb. I happened to run across it first, and I just said, this makes sense to me. The theory that they turn into an assessment tool, it's found in this book. And then if you want to see another